Welcome to the Her Story Circle podcast, the podcast that brings you the extraordinary tales of everyday women who are changing the world. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. I also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. Every week, we dive into the lives, challenges, and triumphs of women from all four corners of the globe. We're here to inspire, enlighten, and connect, sharing stories that uplift and empower. So grab a cup of coffee, settle in, and join us as we explore the incredible journeys of women shaping our future. This is Her Story, where every woman's voice matters. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Her Story Circle. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating woman. Welcome, welcome, welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, and share your story with us today.
Hi everyone, my name is Emma Sothern. I also go by the name Lady Alopecia, which is a website I set up back in 2018 as a response to my own ongoing hair loss. So I live in Hoi An, Vietnam, very, very beautiful location. I've lived here for about 7 years, although I'm originally from Ireland. So I'm also a mum of two little girls, Sunny and Sky. Sunny's 3.5 and Sky's 1.5. So they keep me very, very busy. And as well as running Lady Alopecia, I'm a yoga teacher, mindfulness teacher, who's also recently trained in prenatal yoga and postpartum yoga also. And I'm a freelance copywriter too. So the reason I set up Lady Alopecia was, I guess, to be this kind of supportive platform that I never had growing up with it. I first got alopecia when I was 11, like a month before my 11th birthday. I lost my mum. So she had lupus, which is another autoimmune condition. So that made me, I guess, more susceptible to having alopecia and other autoimmune problems throughout my life. But it never really manifested until I lost her. And I don't think I really understood the grief or the trauma at the time when she died. You know, I was only 11, just before 11. But obviously my body did. And I find that fascinating how the body can kind of store this sort of trauma and react in its own way. So yeah, when I was 11, I noticed my first bald patch, just kind of a small one at the back of my head. I obviously had other things on my mind at the time, so I didn't think too much about it. But as I grew up into the teenage years, I went to boarding school in Dublin. I would suffer quite a lot of anxiety. I was bullied in school, and that kind of expanding patch just gave me another thing to feel afraid of and scared of and feel different. No one I knew had alopecia. I'd never really heard of it before I went to like a doctor when I was maybe about 13, who said, you know, it's not very serious, was very dismissive over it. And the kind of reactions I had from him and from medical professionals throughout the years just made me feel a little bit more alone in it. I felt I shouldn't be as upset as I was about it because it wasn't, you know, life-threatening or serious in their minds. But it did have a huge impact on my emotional and mental health. So yeah, I did start to get whatever treatments I could. I got corticosteroid injections into my scalp when I was only 16, which gave me quite bad headaches and, you know, other bad side effects as well, dizziness, just being fatigued all the time, and nothing really worked. And as the patch grew, I was getting more and more nervous to be out and about in my head in school. So I started wearing headbands, which would continue for years. And as I moved into my early 20s, the patches grew much bigger. The kind of little small stretchy headbands I had couldn't stretch far enough to cover them. I turned to wigs, hair extensions, and I found they were really painful. And again, I always felt like I was hiding myself. Now I know a lot of alopecians will wear wigs and they'll feel much more confident for it. And I salute them as well. You have to do it, makes you feel confident and happy. But for me, I just didn't feel like myself. So fast forward a few years, when I was 28, I asked my partner, who was, well, then my partner, now he's my husband, Andy, to shave my head. So by that stage, I only had, 80% of my hair left anyway. Or sorry, 20% of my hair left anyway, and he shaved it all off. And at that moment as well, I had quit my job kind of the week before. I was about to go traveling on a solo trip to Bali for 2 months the following day. And I very literally wanted a clean slate, a fresh start. So I just said, just take it off. I don't want, to be hiding behind the wigs anymore. So I got on a plane to Bali the next day with a bald head and attracted a lot of weird looks. And it was over the next 2 months that I really, I learned to find, I guess, a strength in myself that I'd never had before, because I had to. I was getting stared at all the time. I was getting openly laughed at. I was getting mocked, in this side of the world. In Asia, the people are very honest, often brutally so, which can be lovely as well, because no one's really hiding what they're thinking. But it meant that I felt very exposed, and I had to very quickly learn to kind of cope with the reactions. But luckily around that time, I'd also started a kind of my journey into yoga. And that really helped me find acceptance through the practice of yoga and later mindfulness, to kind of just find more of a peace with myself. And it was when I came back from that trip, I remember my first Facebook post, God, it's almost 10 years ago now, sharing a picture of my bald head for the first time with all my friends and family, some of who knew that I had alopecia, but lots and lots didn't. And the reaction I got to that Facebook post was just incredible. A lot of people opened up and they told me about how they'd had hair loss, or they knew other people who had it. They were saying things like I was brave, that I was beautiful without hair. And, it's so lovely to hear that sort of thing when the story I'd been telling myself was so negative for years. So it led me to want to kind of help other people feel as alone and isolated as I had. And a couple of years later, I set up Lady Alopecia. So like I said, it was to be the platform that I never had. All I'd had was kind of these really dry, formal medical articles that didn't tell me what it was like to have the condition. And I just wanted to have that community of support. So I set it up in 2018, and what started as kind of an informational resource of like tips to kind of, and treatments I tried, which never worked in the long run, it became this platform of us all sharing our stories and us all realizing there's really tough times, but there's also kind of benefits to being a bit different and to trying out new looks. And though I wear a headscarf now a lot of the time, I actually make these in Hoi An, Vietnam, with my friend B, who's a tailor here, and I sell them because sometimes I know you just don't want to be stared at and you don't feel confident in the bald head. But I also, there's times when I love to do it, and I'll get my head hennaed and I'll decorate it with jewels, especially like things like festivals, and I'll really enjoy being different. So I've seen alopecia now as somewhat as a gift in many senses. And my goal with the website is to help other people find the positives of being bald as well. You mightn't be at that stage yet if you're going through hair loss. I know how scary and frustrating it is to feel so different and to not know what you can do about it. But since I found that acceptance with it, since I've stopped trying all these miracle cures, which, to be honest, I don't really think there's a miracle cure that exists. Well, maybe there is. I'm not at that stage. I'm tired of chasing something, and I'd prefer to be just acceptant of it and to get on with my life and find the kind of benefits in the interesting people and opportunities it's brought my way, such as speaking here today. So with the website, I hope to kind of provide that support, I guess, to provide the headscarves for those who want it. I've also set up a yoga for alopecia course, which is, I believe, the first ever one, which doesn't promise people's hair to grow back, but does offer kind of mindfulness tips and tricks to sort of reduce inflammation and stress in the body, and to help you come to terms with it. I've only run the course once. We had an amazing time. And I just find it such a powerful thing to speak to other women like me who are going through hair loss, and to share our experiences and to watch us all progress together and see just how kind of simple breathing exercises and a daily yoga practice really could help us to find that acceptance. So that's where I am with it now. I'm hoping that the message I have of empowerment and resilience in the face of hair loss will help anyone going through it, including my own daughters, if they ever do have it, because alopecia in children, I know, is from experience is such a scary thing to go to. So I just want to help those parents who are looking for kind of advice on how to help their kids through it too, and how they can realize a message that they're very, very beautiful with or without hair. So.
Wow. Emma, you've gone through quite a journey, and a journey of acceptance to get to this point. Now, you mentioned that wearing wigs and extensions caused you discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
What was the emotional toll of trying to cover up your alopecia? And when did you realize that they weren't for you?
So yeah, I guess I've never been a person who styled her hair very much. Before I had alopecia, I had this really like long curly red hair, and it would always just go naturally as it was. So I never learned to be a person who was good with curlers or styled it very well. So when I bought a wig, I wanted something that was very close to my natural hair. So it was a human hair wig, and I had to try to learn how to put a curler on. I'd put it on my own head first, dig in these little combs, and they were really painful because I'd so little hair for it to cling onto anyway. So the combs would just dig into my scalp, and the amount of burns I gave myself trying to curl it, to look like my own hair. So I eventually used to put it on a pillow and get up for work like over an hour early in the morning so I could curl it, and so no one would know. Because I basically went from wearing a headband to having a wig within the same job within kind of a week or two, and I didn't want them to know that there was a difference. So yeah, the anxiety I felt really confident at first because I felt like, oh, I have this really beautiful wig. I look preened. I have this kind of beauty ideal of long hair equaling some sort of beauty, femininity. So I would really enjoy that for a short time, I'd say. But then the discomfort got too much, like the scratches I'd have, the burns I'd get. And every time I lived in Ireland still at the time, which is very windy, and like I'd have to wear a hat over the wig to keep it in place. I'd be terrified cycling to work in case it'd blow apart. And I was always kind of patting it down to see if it was okay. And it just wasn't worth it for me. Now, probably nowadays there are better versions and everything, but I always felt really uncomfortable, really like it was too warm, too claustrophobic. And as soon as I come in the door, I take off my wig, and like Andy would say, "You just look so beautiful like that. Why don't you just not wear the wig anymore?" And he made it sound so easy. And it took him a while, I think, of saying it for me to maybe think, oh, it could be, it could be a look. Maybe it's something that actually might work for me.
Yeah.
So it took a while. I will say I wore the wig for maybe 2 years.
Okay.
But I've been wearing headbands for probably 10 years before that, I'd say. So yeah,
Wow.
it was a journey. It wasn't until I was 28. I'm 38 now, so it's been without wigs for 10 years, although I will wear a headscarf often these days, just for sometimes, I'm in the mood. Sometimes I just want to blend in a little bit more and not have those stares, which inevitably come. So I appreciate being able to do both.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, building Lady Alopecia and raising awareness has now become your mission and a very, very big vision.
Mm-hmm.
What inspired you to create it, and what impact has the platform had on people who are facing hair loss?
Well, I'd say I set it up in response to that very first Facebook post with me and my bald head and saying, I've got a secret to share that not many people know about. And I told people I've been having alopecia for years. And their response really sent me on. They weren't only kind of congratulating me, but there was so many people who messaged me privately, in the comments or in emails, to say they'd gone through it too. And I was really surprised by that. You've no idea what's going on in people's lives. Even the most confident people can be hiding kind of this, and men and women as well, which also surprised me because I hadn't realized it can be fairly common in men as well. And of course, they can be very insecure about their appearance too. So it did take a while for me to actually launch the site. From then until the site launched, it was almost 3 years. But I was in the background kind of researching alopecia. I wanted to be sure I knew more about it before I talk about helping other people. And I still say on my site, I'm not a doctor. I can't prescribe anything or even stand by treatments 100%, because some things work for other people and clearly nothing's what worked for me long term. But I wanted it to be more just a supportive resource, I guess, because I didn't have that. And what's kept me going is these personal emails I'll get of people who say, you know, I gave them strength, I gave them courage. A lot of people who've shaved their heads too and said they found freedom and liberation. Some
Yeah.
people read a post that my husband wrote about dating a bald girlfriend, and they've just been like, wow, wow, wow. It shows me if you can find someone like that, that there's hope for me, you know, because we really do link beauty to long hair or to this kind of standard, I guess. Changing now, we have like people we can look up to now, but
Mhm.
it's up to, I
So,
think, me and people like me to change that conversation, especially for younger people, as I'm finding. I just want I don't want teenage girls to not feel as weird and alone as I did, and to change that conversation.
so how do you think mainstream beauty standards affect people with alopecia, and what changes would you like to see in the conversation around hair and identity?
Well, I think it is changing now, luckily. But I mean, we have like Barbie and everything like that has a lot to answer for.
Mm,
When I was growing up, so sort of like teenager in the 90s, not or noughties, and it was very much the kind of really thin women, long hair, um, and that was just sexy and that was beauty.
mhm.
Like it was all Britney Spears, you know, and everything with the kind of tossing her, although she did shave her head. Um, but nowadays, I think thanks to people like, you know, Jada Pinkett Smith shaving her head, there's this Congresswoman, Ayanna Presley, as well, who did it. Like there's more people normalizing it, I guess.
Mhm.
And I would say from my own like Irish background, Sinead O'Connor, who was one of the most beautiful and
Yes.
talented artists that I knew. And I remember just that Nothing Compares video and her just looking so soft and vulnerable and beautiful. Um, and Grace Jones, who would be a massive icon of mine, when I saw her perform at a festival in Ireland, you know, she was only wearing kind of black bodysuit with spikes on it on her bald head. And I just thought that is just incredible.
Yeah.
And for me, it's seeing people like that, and that can change the beauty standards when you can see it's confidence that is the beautiful thing, and feeling you don't need other people's reactions to validate you, because that sort of inner peace will be what shines and will be the thing that's most beautiful. So if that's a lesson we can teach our kids and start to change society with, then I think we'd be doing a very good job. Just find that inner contentment first.
So, what are some common misconceptions about alopecia that you aim to debunk through your platform?
Oh, common sense. Well, I think it's probably a lot more common than people think. First of all, like I think it's like 7 million people in the US will have it or have had it or will get it at some point, which is quite a significant number. And
Yes.
it's quite a young disease as well. Alopecia areata, I'm talking about here. This is the patchy hair loss. Um,
Right.
I think most people will get it before they're 40. I can't remember the exact. I think it's like 80% will get it before they're 40 years old. So you know, it's we tend to see people losing their hair and think it's kind of to do with age. But it can be affecting kids. More and more kids are actually getting it these days. Just maybe as a result of environment, or there's more people getting it after COVID. Like there's all these many factors involved, and it's not all related to stress. That's another kind of, I guess, misconception that I had.
Yeah.
Because what the doctor told me when I first went was like, oh, you're just stressed. And my dad was baffled because he was like, well, she's 13. What does she have to be stressed about, you know, at this point? And that was almost something I punished myself about and felt guilty because I felt like I was causing myself the stress and trying to get myself calmed down, which causes more stress. Um, but yeah, so the misconception, I guess, is that it's one thing that can be cured, whereas there's so many factors involved, which makes it such a difficult disease. It's genetic disposition, it's hormone imbalances, it can be stress, triggered by stress, but there's also a lot of other factors in play, which is, yeah, so it's a difficult one to treat, I guess.
Yeah, it's not easy. Now, what advice would you give to someone who's struggling with self acceptance due to hair loss?
I would think I would speak to my younger self as well and just try to put a lid on the searching for miracle treatments, because you can cause yourself a lot of extra stress around it. There's so much kind of wasted energy in all that hope to find a cure, which a lot of these treatments can be temporary fixes. But maybe if you stop using them or something else comes into your life, to cause a new patch. It's literally like I would see one patch fill in, then another one pop up, and it was just this endless kind of cycle of having hope in a treatment and then having that hope dashed. So just finding acceptance, I guess, it's a big one, but trying to accept that it may never come back. Like working at the big picture and then coming backwards and going, how can you find acceptance on a day-to-day level with that? And maybe that's too big a thing to think it might never come back, but just then if that's the case, take each day at a time and say, how can I feel more confident with this today? And maybe it is wearing a headscarf, or maybe it is going on Instagram and finding other alopecians. There's a lot of us out there who are kind of spreading a positive message, and just changing your kind of social media diet, I guess. Looking at those stories that are going to be more positive and promoting body positivity. I know Changing Faces is a really good one as well that I follow too. And it's really advocating kind of beauty across different sort of types, let's say. And I guess it's exposure to more of these sort of people and walks of life and different looks that's going to help you find that acceptance with yourself. It's all about normalizing it.
Yeah. Now, you've trained as a yoga and mindfulness teacher. What has this practice helped you? How has this practice helped you on your journey with alopecia?
Well, on a practical level, I would say doing regular breath work was a thing that would calm my nervous system down and help me to regulate my emotions, which could be very triggered very easily if someone was to laugh at my head or come up and say something. And sometimes even these comments are very positive, but even just being caught off your guard in that way can be quite disruptive, if you're kind of already a little bit on edge. So I'd say the breathing exercises for nervous system regulation did really help me. And yeah, I think coming back to the moment, I mean, mindfulness is all about being in the present moment. So it would stop me kind of spiraling and worrying what everyone was thinking about me and worrying if my hair would ever grow back or not, if I was able to just take each moment at a time and focus on my own experience and focus on maybe often I would think people were talking about me when they weren't, because I was just always in my own head, and people were just maybe getting on with their day. Maybe they were looking, maybe they weren't, but it was the story I was telling myself that needed to be changed. So if I was able to notice my thoughts and then just say, that's a thought, it's not true, that's just what I'm telling myself, and then even the next step to try to maybe create a more neutral thought. This is through thought work as well, or a more positive thought about it. It really can transform your own kind of acceptance with these conditions.
So what role does community play in healing, and how has Lady Alopecia community provided support for those struggling with hair loss?
I would say community is vital. In these sort of struggles, we can't go through them alone. And it's only, I even realized the first time I took off my wig to 4 of my best friends at home, it was long before I shaved my head. And it was like this big kind of secret. I unveiled, took off the wig when we were away for a night together, and they were so shocked because they'd had no idea, these friends. But just they didn't judge me. They were absolutely incredible, and it would be a few years before I get the courage to shave my head. But just knowing I had people like that to talk to was pivotal for my mental and emotional health. I'd say I was at the time in my very early 20s, so I really needed people to speak to. That wasn't just my family, that was girlfriends who kind of got what age I was and stage I was in life. And with the Lady Alopecia community, I'd say there's so much that ties us as well. A lot of us are mums, worrying about our kids getting it, or worrying what our kids might say when they grow old enough to ask about our hair. So just being able to chat about these day-to-day things, I feel is really important. And just to know there's other people like you who are going through it. Like I said, I'd set it up as a kind of informational site. So I thought I could kind of share tips and product reviews and all that. But I realized that's not the important part of it at all. That's not what people come to Lady Alopecia. They can get, a lot more kind of scientific articles everywhere else. And I'll direct them to other resources if I can. But I'm there just to support them and to say, I'm experiencing and living my life and loving it still, even with alopecia. And you can as well. We just need to kind of talk to each other and share.
That's lovely. Now, you've lived in different parts of the world, from Dublin to Bali and now Vietnam. How has each place influenced your personal growth and approach to life?
Well, I'd say in Bali was very an important turning point for me to put myself out there. It was my first real sense of, yeah, like I said, the kind of the honesty they have over this side of the world, the very direct
Yes.
nature. And it was a shock for me from Ireland is, we can be quite repressed we're too polite with this sort of thing. So I'd get the looks, but people would never say anything. So it was almost worse because I prefer for it to almost be said, and then you can
Start a
have a conversation.
conversation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was quite a shock to suddenly have gone from nothing to having it coming from every angle, and it was, yeah, like kind of cold water therapy or something. I was plunged right in, and I thought, okay, I'm going to have to learn to deal with this. So it really served me, I think. And in Vietnam is the same. People are incredibly open, which is such a lovely side as well. But that I have no qualms about telling me, like, if I look strange or if I look like just saying, what's wrong with your hair? What's up with your head? Um, and yes, sometimes that is very welcome if I'm in the right mood. Sometimes it can be really hurtful, which is why I do cover up a good bit of the time these days as well. Um, but I do love that kind of openness, and it's taught me to speak about it without crying. Like, in the early days, I would tear up, especially if people were coming to tell me, they'd had hair loss through cancer or something, and they wanted to know if I was sick. And I felt a really weird combination of feeling guilty that I wasn't actually sick,
Oh,
but also going, well, it has affected me. So, but not to the same level that they'd experienced, obviously. So, yeah, a really weird mix of emotions would come up, but now I can talk about it a little bit more openly, I guess, and pragmatically, and say, we all have our experiences with whatever we're suffering.
yeah.
And it does make it easier just to talk about it, I think, rather than holding it in.
So, how has becoming a mother changed your perspective on beauty, identity, and self acceptance?
Yeah, it's funny because I've written to a lot of parents of kids with alopecia, and I've published an ebook on it also, like a guide for parents of kind of mindfulness methods to explore with their kids and kind of how to introduce alopecia to them and help them cope with it. But even though I've done that, I still feel the fear that my daughters might get it as well. And I wonder how I'll cope as a parent with it and how I can ready them, I guess. But they already asked me about it, and it's such a nice opportunity to chat with them about it and about beauty. And I really, like, as much as I can, try to say it's how you feel about yourself that matters. And or I won't even tell them. I'll ask Sunny, because she chats to me about a lot about this sort of stuff, and I say, well, how do you feel about yourself today? And she'll say happy, and she's very good at naming her emotions and her kind of feelings about things. So I guess I'll continue to do that and continue to ask her what's beautiful to her, and try to guide her in that sense, rather than just sending a load of material her way, some of which probably won't be very helpful.
I
Yeah,
think just
I'll
by
let her lead.
living by example, the way you are is going to help your girls a lot. I
I'd hope
love
so.
it.
Thank you.
So, you're working on your memoir, The Girl with a Bald Head. What do you hope readers will take away from your story?
Well, the main takeaway, I guess, because it's a story of how I became Lady Alopecia, and it's about grief and different trauma I've had through my life, but how you can see these as a gift. They're definitely gifts I never asked for, but I probably wouldn't return because of all the experiences they've brought my way and the amazing people they've led me to. And I wouldn't be where I am. I certainly wouldn't be living here in Hoi An. I wouldn't be a yoga teacher. There's so many pivotal crossroads style moments that I said, if I hadn't had these different forms of grief in my life, if I hadn't had these challenges, I'd be living a very safer, different life, I think, and have
Yes.
different challenges because of that. But I can honestly say that even with everything that's happened, I'm really, really grateful, and I'm really happy where I am.
It certainly has stretched you.
Mm-hmm.
My last two questions are a bit of a thought experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And you alluded to the one a little earlier. In the first one, I'm going to teleport you into the past. And we are going to go and meet the younger you, the young woman who was going through this challenge, unsure what life had ahead for her. Just in case there's another young person who's listening to this conversation right now, or a woman who's at the beginning of her journey with hair loss, If you could go back and give her 3 nuggets of wisdom based on what life has taught you up until this point, what would those 3 nuggets of wisdom be?
It's love for yourself. That's the most important. Enough people will maybe try to take that love away, but just have the love for yourself and keep that strong, and that's all that matters. So that would be one. I guess there will be days when you just want to cry in the shower or on the bathroom floor, and try not to judge yourself for that. We all have days like that. We all need days like that to process. So yeah, just allow yourself to have your feelings. That's another. And I would say the third kind of point I would have is to share about it, definitely. Whether it's getting it out on the page in journaling, whether it's sending a long rambling voice note to yourself or a friend, or calling someone up or meeting them for a chat. We can't do this alone, and we shouldn't do it alone. And things can get a lot brighter when you have someone else to help you see the way.
Love that last one. Yeah, you don't have to suffer alone. Reaching out for help, reaching out for support is definitely something that in all circumstances, women need to remember that. The last question is futuristic, and now I'm going to teleport you into the future. And we are going to go and meet the 90-year-old you.
Okay.
And she
Maybe I'll have her.
She's sitting in her rocking chair, surrounded by her children, her grandchildren, all of these amazing people she loves. She's traveled around the world, has helped so many other women in similar situations. If you could go and have a conversation with this wise woman who has led you up until this point, who taught you to embrace this difference that you have and love it and use it and empower other women with it, what will you say to her when you finally meet her?
Oh, okay, I'm probably going to tear up now. I'm so glad that you let go of worrying. I'm so glad that you stopped regretting, and you actually got to enjoy life and live life as it should be with your family and the people you love, and to realize that, yeah, love is all that matters, and connection is all that matters.
It's absolutely beautiful. I love to ask women that question because a lot of times women don't realize that the wise woman is already in us. There's that quiet voice that says, go left, go right, go to Vietnam, go to Bali. You're from Ireland. Look at where you're living now. This would never have happened if you hadn't trusted that quiet voice within.
Yeah.
And the other reason why I like to ask this question is I have a game that I play where I play with the energy of who I am becoming. If I'm working on something and I'm struggling with finding an answer or a solution, I go into my meditation and prayers, and I go to bed with a very simple question in my head. And it's as simple as, so what is the next step? Because a lot of times we don't know what the next step is, right? And we look outside of ourselves for these answers, but the answers are really within. I believe the Creator will never give you a challenge that you cannot overcome. And so I play with the future me. I talk to her. She guides me. And sometimes she shows up like my grandmother and gives me these cryptic messages that make no sense at 2 o'clock in the morning. But when I wake up, I'm in the shower. It's like a light bulb moment. And I know exactly what I need to do to execute the next step. Or I talk about what I'm working on with friends, with family, with colleagues. And it's like a jigsaw puzzle. By the end of the week, each person has given me a piece to this puzzle and it all falls into place. So just learning to go within to find the answers.
That's an amazing exercise. Yeah. I think our intuition is so strong. If we could just get out of our own way half the time, we already know what to do. So
we do. And the thing is, the more you use it, the stronger it gets, and the stronger it gets, the more you use it. Exactly. To a point where you're not even second guessing yourself anymore. You just trust the voice when you hear it.
completely.
So
And it
thank
becomes
you
so much
for
easier.
trusting your voice. She
Thank
led
you so
you
much.
here. And yeah, when you meet her, when she's 90 or 100 years old, you have to thank her for the guidance.
Oh, and I'll remember this, reminding me to listen to myself. Thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. And thank you to everybody who tuned in today. The Her Story Circle is not just a podcast. We are a social impact movement that brings you the stories and voices of women from all over the world. We share our stories, our experiences, our trials, our tribulations, our victories to inspire you, energize you, and motivate you. But most importantly, to help take you from where you are now to where you're trying to go. So if you are a woman who's been diagnosed with alopecia, who is going through breast cancer treatment, any kind of a cancer, and you have hair loss, it's not the end of the world. Just focus in remembering that you are beautiful. And if you have to tell yourself every single day in the morning, or as Emma said, send yourself little voice notes and say, hey, let's talk in 30 days' time. This is going to get better. And listen to those voice notes in the future as well to keep yourself motivated. Thank you, Emma, so much for sharing your story with our community today.
Thank you, Gertrude. So lovely to meet you.
I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody, with yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now. Emma, don't go away. Thank you for tuning into the Her Story Circle podcast. I hope today's story has inspired you to believe in the power of our stories and the difference you can make in the world when you use your voice. I'm Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you, where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a rich tapestry of diverse perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these stories with more listeners. Follow us on social media by looking for the Her Story Circle podcast for more updates. And join us tomorrow for another episode filled with courage, resilience, and empowerment. Remember, your story matters, and together we're building a stronger, more inclusive world. Until next time, keep making